Welcome to the Spinwhiz Comic Show. Whoa. From Raleigh, North Carolina. Join us for exclusive interviews with the publishers bringing you the newest titles in indie comics, webcomics, movies, and more.
No way.
And now, here's your host, Jeff Palumbo.
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the stream. Welcome to the Spinwhiz Comic Show. My name, as always, is Jeff Palumbo. Thank you all for being here. For those of you that are live on Twitch, feel free to jump in and get ready for a night of your life. I'm telling you, this could be potentially one of the best interviews we've ever had. Don't tell the other people from Source Point Press. I don't need Frank and all those other guys getting on me when I meet them at C2E2 showing up. But in the meantime, this is going to be great. I'm telling you. I've been a fan of this young lady for what I'm pretty sure is years. Even before Spinwhiz, we reached out together as for Spinwhiz Comics and her comics. I'll get into that in a little bit. I don't want to do too much. I want to let her talk about all her coolness and all her hotness. The best part is she probably doesn't even think that she's cool. So you're in for a treat. But thank you for being here. If you are not watching live, remember YouTube. Just check down below for all the links, and podcast. Obviously, you can check us out on YouTube. You can hit us up on Twitter. You can on Twitch, and then on all social media. We have all this because I want you to check out this Kickstarter that this person is doing. So, without further ado, tonight on the show is none other than Boston Metaphysical Society creator Madeleine Holly-Rosing. And I'm going to bring her in right now. Let me make sure that my mic is working, and so is hers. Let's get this going. Madeleine, are you there?
Yes, I am here.
Welcome to the stream.
Thank you for having me, Jeff. I appreciate it.
Anytime. So, for those of people that don't know, you've got a amazing and long-running comic called Boston Metaphysical Society.
That's correct.
And you and I, while we have tied out over the past couple of years just to say hello, we knew who each other were. I know who you were because you had a comic. You knew who I was just because I was a pain in your butt. But we finally met for the first time ever at C2E or San Diego Comic-Con.
San Diego Comic-Con,
yep.
Yes.
And
yes.
I wanted to thank you as to how kind and courteous you were. I mean, granted, when people wanted to buy something, I got out of the way. I understand the drill. I know why you're there. But
and I appreciate that. Thank you.
Sure. But at the same time, when nobody is there, you were attentive on just talking and getting to know me, and I greatly appreciate that. I find a lot of publishers and creators that I meet are not like that. It doesn't mean that they are disrespectful in their mannerism of trying to be disrespectful or not caring, but they are so keyed in on something else that they almost forget the relationship aspect. And I know that you and I were briefly talking about that before we got on, and I was like, whoa, this is really good stuff. Let's not spoil it before the show. So how is it? I know that you say that you're an introvert, yet you seem very much like an extrovert at these shows. And online, you're very personable. You're always saying, you're always backing a whole bunch of different people. And you seem very gregarious online and when I met you. And so obviously, you saying an introvert, you don't feel that way. But do you also see what I see in that a lot of these creators sometimes are very introverted and they do have difficulty being at shows even though they know they have to be there?
Yeah.
Some.
Some. Not all. I do have an added advantage in that I have a marketing background. I did used to be a marketing director.
Oh.
Yeah, that. Yeah, I have some skill sets that others don't necessarily have. But I mean, it's hard work, and I mean, for me, I know I need to stand up and be at a table and talk to people and engage them. And half the fun of being at a con is meeting people. Mm-hmm. I can't tell you how many people that I've met at cons are now my friends. Mm-hmm. I mean, We do lunch, we go to events together. I mean, it's just, and you meet the most interesting people at
Mm-hmm.
cons and and smaller events. Um, I can say I have I have fans who I now consider friends who are cancer researchers, who are physics professors, who are, I mean, all different wonderful things. And what's really great for me is that if I ever have a question about something, I have resources.
Yeah, a ton of them.
And that's wonderful. But if you don't mind, just in case your audience has never heard of Boston Metaphysical
Yeah, let's
Society,
get into that.
okay. Uh, the overall story is about an ex-Pinkerton detective, a spirit photographer, and a genius scientist who battles supernatural forces in late 1800s Boston. We started off a six-issue miniseries with art by Emily Hugh. We finished that off and started doing sequels. The first one is Scourge the Mechanical Man. The second is The Spirit of Rebellion, and the third, which is on Kickstarter right now until Friday at
Mm-hmm.
11:30, is Ghosts and Demons. And we did bring on a new artist, the fabulous Gwen Tavares, and it it ended up being a natural segue between Emily and Gwen, and it's worked out beautifully.
That's awesome. And where did you come up with the background of this story? Because I mean, was it part of your wheelhouse, or you just like I saw? I mean, I don't even know. It's so drastically different that I mean, I'd love to know how you came up with this idea.
It kind of evolved from a script. Well, actually, I should back up a little bit more. There's a reason why I'm wearing this hat that says UCLA. I went to UCLA Film School. I have an MFA in screenwriting. And while I was there, I wrote a script called Stargazer. And it was for the Sloan Foundation competition. And for those of you who are not familiar with the Sloan scripts and Sloan films, they have to be written in such a way that the science is accurate and portrayals of scientists and engineers have to be as real people and not caricatures.
Hmm.
Meaning, all your scientists can't be walking around in, white lab coats, and they can't necessarily be, the mustache twirling villain kind of thing.
Right.
Yeah. So I was fortunate enough that my script won the Sloan Fellowship that year for UCLA. And it was a story, and this is going to sound very familiar. It was a story about in this case, a Scottish American woman who came to this country in the late 1800s, pregnant, penniless, and abandoned by her husband. And she was hired to be a maid in the house of the director of the Harvard Observatory, obviously in Boston. And he noticed her attention to detail and eventually hired her to become what became known as the female computers. They literally called them that, female computers.
Mm-hmm.
And she eventually discovered over 10,000 stars and developed her own stellar classification system. Well, needless to say, that required quite a bit of research for that time period in Boston. So all of that research became part of Boston Metaphysical, and which on the other hand was my love for the X-Files,
Mm-hmm.
and science fiction and history, which I eventually found out was steampunk.
Exactly. I was going to ask that. I'm like, it's steampunk now, right? Like they came up with a whole genre, and you have. And I want to say, for those of you listening, if you know about steampunk, this is the woman who I personally think, has forwarded the actual genre of steampunk in comics.
Well, thank you.
Like, I honestly think you've been doing it for so long, and it's such a good read. I think a lot of people gravitate towards that. Anyway, I didn't mean to cut you off. I just,
No, that's fine. That's fine.
Insert of compliment there.
Thank you. No, it has been interesting because I have had people read the comic who said, I don't like steampunk, but I like yours.
Mm-hmm.
And I think it's because in the past, a lot of steampunk has been very gadget heavy
Mm-hmm.
and less character driven. And mine is all character driven.
Yep.
And yes, there are the gadgets. There's always going to be for the fun gadgets, but they're an organic part of the story as opposed to driving the story.
Yep. I agree. And that's awesome. And I think a lot of steampunk stories fall short in, I shouldn't say fall short. I should say that they are a short run because they lack the character development and the real character portrayal and storyline. It is more based around the gadgets, and there's only so many times you can see the same gadget do the same thing, or expansion of gadgets and stuff like that. So I think yours allows for there to be continuous storyline.
Yeah, it is an alternate history of the United States. And one of the things I talk about when talking about Boston Metaphysical overall and its themes is that you can't discuss the evolution and development of the United States without including women and people of color,
Mm-hmm.
because they were an integral part of the development of this country. And Boston Metaphysical is a mirror to that.
Mm-hmm.
And it is a more stratified, class stratified society than the one we live in, sort of, kind of.
Yeah, well,
Sort of, kind of. But it's been really interesting. It's a huge universe, and it just keeps developing in a lot of different directions. As you probably have seen, I've also done prose.
Mm-hmm.
And the key to the prose versus the sequential art is that the original 6-issue miniseries is the font of which everything sprung, and everything in the timeline before the 6-issue miniseries is in prose, and everything in the timeline that's in the future will be in sequential art.
Oh, wow.
And the reason for being is very simple. Budget.
Good call. Yeah,
It's
funny how
budget.
that works.
It's all about budget. I mean, because I sat down a couple years ago and said, okay, how, particularly when we finish the 6-issue miniseries, say, how can we continue forward without, a comic completely sucking away all of my creative time?
Mm-hmm.
Because it took, 4 to 5 years to get the 6-issue miniseries done.
Mm-hmm.
And so I said, I can do a one-shot once a year. I can do that and be able to do other stuff. And also, maintain the budget, because this is a business and people sometimes forget about that.
Oh, yeah.
But, there's budgets involved, and, what you can do. And so, I mean, we've grown slowly, but we've been growing every year. And that's really based on the budget and what my time and what the budget can handle. Like this year, obviously, we have the new standalone Ghosts and Demons, but we also have the coloring book.
Oh, wow. Are you going to send that to us too so we can load it?
I can.
Yeah.
I can. I can send you the cover. The cover's in the Kickstarter.
Oh, well, let's wait till the Kickstarter's over then.
Yeah, it is part of the Kickstarter. You can actually, it's a nice package. You can get the Ghosts and Demons and the new coloring book for $20, and that includes postage.
I'm in. Well, I think my son would really enjoy. I have a 7-year-old, and I think he'd enjoy drawing it or coloring it. Although,
yeah, no, it is an all ages coloring book. So it has our main characters in it, Samuel, Caitlin, and Granville Woods. But it also has Belle, Edison, Tesla, and Houdini, the Demon, Duncan the Ghost, some of our new characters, Alma. So yeah, it's a lot of fun. Alejandro Lee did the art for that, And I've known Alejandro for a number of years now. We met, I think, at a steampunk convention a long time ago.
Awesome.
And I love his art. He's so talented. And I was looking for a way for him and I to work together. And when I thought, oh God, we should do a coloring book. I wonder if I can afford it. And oh, Alejandro would be great. And so I talked to him and we worked out a budget. And I said, yeah, we can do this. So we did it.
That's awesome. I have not met him yet. I don't know if he still travels or not, but I'm going to a lot of shows this year and next year. So I assume that eventually I'm going to run into him.
He should be at WonderCon. In fairness, he was gone for about a year. He was in Taiwan with family, and he just came back towards the end of last year.
Oh, okay.
So he's just going to be coming back to the con circuit. I think his first is probably WonderCon.
Okay.
So you'll see him around eventually.
Yeah, this year I think we have San Diego, Heroes Con, New York Comic Con, C2E2, and then Dragon Con.
Okay.
Is what we're going to. And by we, I mean me. And then, are you headed to San Diego again this year?
Yes, we will be at San Diego. And when I say we, I'm actually referring to my husband.
Mm-hmm.
He's kind of you've met him.
I have. He's wonderful.
Yeah, he does panels at WonderCon and San Diego called No Tow Trucks Beyond Mars, which is really fun. Yeah, he's been at JPL for a long time, and he brings a bunch of rocket scientists, and they talk about a lot of fun things that you don't necessarily hear about in the news, and it's really fun and educational all at the same time.
I love it. Wow, that's kind of like a panel that I want to make sure that I hit this time.
Yeah, I think you'd really enjoy that. I know he'll be submitting. I'm pretty sure, I'm 99.9% sure they'll accept his panel, because it keeps growing every year. Every year they have to give him a bigger room. Yeah, definitely try to get there. I know he's WonderCon. He'll be giving the panel. I believe it's Saturday at 6:30.
Okay, maybe I need to try to hit WonderCon also.
Yeah.
I don't know. It's like you said, budget is tough.
Yes, the budget thing.
Yeah, and amazingly enough, I have not rebooted Chimera yet because all my money is going into Spinwhiz. Because now that we have partners like yourself, I feel like the money should be going to trying to help you guys and not so much my own personal projects. So I'm trying to gravitate more and more, awareness and traffic to the site to help, partners like yourself out to really get the word out about your content so that we all make money eventually.
Yes.
And hopefully more. And then when I have enough, or an artist is like, I really love Chimera #1, I want to do #2, because unfortunately my artist passed away from cancer about a year and a half ago.
I'm so sorry to hear that.
And he was awesome. Bong Dazo was just amazing. He did a whole bunch of stuff for Marvel. He did some Deadpool. He also did Dark Horse with Knights of the Old Republic. Just an amazing talent, an amazing person, one of the nicest people you'll ever meet. And unfortunately, the world decides to take some of the better people instead of some of the worst people.
Yeah, unfortunately.
But eventually that will be back up. And who knows, maybe Source Point Press will talk to Travis and be like, you know what, why don't you take that? And we can just go from there. But so let's talk briefly, because I know very few female creators as of right now. I mean, I'm starting to meet more, but when you started in comics as a female creator, how many years ago was that? Not saying, exactly how many, but
actually, I've only been in the comics industry for 7 years.
Okay. And
7, 8 years, yeah.
Okay, so you actually kind of started when I started.
Yeah, probably.
It's just that we have been working on the site for the last 7 years when my comic failed, because Kickstarter then and now are not even the same boat.
It's different, yeah.
Completely different. So as a female creator, how do you feel any differences in shift, as in compared to being a female in, obviously we'll call it real life, but then as being a creator, when you're part of that circuit, the comic industry is actually a very, very small, tight-knit community. But are you are you seen differently? Do you feel like people look at you differently because you're a comic creator and a female, or is it just the comic industry is actually so cool and open that you feel like everybody's equal?
It falls under the category of it depends.
Yeah, well,
yeah, I would say for the independent comic creator community, there's a lot of female creators. There is a lot, and I know some effort is being made to populate Artist Alley and small press with diversity.
mm-hmm.
Between men, women, and of course people with color and people of color, excuse me. And they haven't quite gotten on board with the guest list, though. The guest list tends to be heavily white and heavily male.
And heavily old.
And heavily old, yes. You will see a few, like Gail Simone and Jodie Hauser, who are amazing. I mean, they are the goddesses of comics as far as I'm concerned. But
whoa, that's high praise coming from you.
Oh, well, they've been doing it a lot longer than I have, and have skill sets beyond mine. It's really amazing what they can do. But they're also working, with, Marvel and DC and,
Mm-hmm.
and some of the big ones. I think the way women are treated in independent comics is different than if you're writing for Marvel or DC. And what I see is when women start writing in what has been normally considered a male sandbox,
Mm-hmm.
then the trolls start coming out.
Yeah.
And I have not had to deal with that, and that's because I've been doing my own thing.
Mm-hmm.
I have my own IP. I don't anticipate ever working for Marvel or DC, and that's fine. If they come calling, great, but whatever, I'm happy.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, it's when you start getting into the licensed material that has been around for decades, those women, they get a lot of pushback.
Yeah, that's unfortunate.
Yeah.
I hope to meet them someday, hopefully at San Diego Comic-Con or New York Comic-Con. I hope to be able to say hello, just because I'm trying to meet just new people in general. It doesn't matter if they want to publish on the site or not, because it is such a tight-knit community, and because these people are just amazing and have been through a lot more than I have. It's almost like going to the source of people who have been there, done that, and doing it over again, and kicking ass and taking names all the way through the mud. And I love meeting those people. They're my favorite types of people, and they're usually the nicest as well.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, if you ever get a chance to interview Gail Simone, I think your viewership would skyrocket.
Well,
she's pretty amazing, and she handles trolls like a pro. Man, she's amazing.
I will have to reach out to her and see if she'll jump on with me one night and just talk. I think that's one of the biggest things that I like that is different than other podcasts or streams, is that it's great that there's a lot of people out there that want to pitch the product and that's it. But I love getting to know people and seeing what they're about, because as you and I were talking earlier, when you're at these shows and at the conventions, people like your content, but they really, really latch on to your content and become a brand champion and a loyalist when they meet you. Because you are, and I mean you because you're of who you are, but I meant you in the general royal you, that as a creator, meeting a creator really helps them to sink in and feel like they're almost one step closer to the source of something that they really enjoy. And that's a very big deal. So I love meeting people because I don't get to all the time. We have a lot of publishers on the site now, which is awesome. Mm-hmm. But my goal is to try to get every single one of them on the site so that other people, when we promote this, other people can get to know you like I do. And I think that's super important to me.
Yeah, it's like when we were talking, like you mentioned earlier, what creators have to understand is that they are the face of their project or their product, and they're not just selling uh, their product, they're selling themselves.
Mm-hmm.
And particularly, it's even more important, say, when running a Kickstarter, because there's so many Kickstarters out there and wonderful ones, just amazing ones, that you do have to differentiate yourself. And which is why when I teach crowdfunding, because excuse me, I also have a book out called Kickstarter for the Independent Creator. And one of the things I talk about in the book and in classes I teach is, why this story, and you spend a little bit of time talking about what this story means to you.
Mm-hmm.
Whatever, what does Boston Metaphysical mean to you? What does whatever your project means to you? Because that puts a little bit of your personality and who you are out into the world.
Mm-hmm.
That doesn't mean to overshare necessarily.
Well, right.
See, I see a lot of oversharing.
Yeah, well, there's that too. That's a fine line, right?
Yeah, there is a fine line. You have to find the balance and, talk about what's important to you. And that will engage people. And if it's important to them, then they'll take a second look or a harder look at your project and then be able to decide, well, do I want to put my money here?
Mm-hmm.
Because there's a lot of places to put your money. And I feel honored that at this point, 560 people have pledged to my Kickstarter.
That's amazing.
And, that doesn't happen by magic, by the way.
No. There is a definitive way to do it. But you've been hustling too. You hustle.
That's true.
And that has a lot to do with it. So I'm going to take your class. Or I'm just going to hire you as a consultant and give you a piece of whatever it is, because I would love to reboot Chimera in that aspect. And I'm, as a marketing professional, so speaking marketing professional to marketing professional, that's my background, is marketing and engagement strategy. Mm-hmm. But Kickstarter is so drastically different from any engagement strategy or any engagement platform or social media that I've used. I feel like I need a quick course on, okay, forget all that stuff you learned. You need to do it this way, because there is a very calculated formula to doing it properly. Do you feel like it took you a while to get that, or was it because of your marketing background that you're like, okay, I get it?
Oh no. It took a while. Our first Kickstarter failed, like many do, and that's because we had made some assumptions that turned out to be incorrect. Because Boston Metaphysical started out as a webcomic, and
correct.
we were getting about 7,000 unique views per month by the time we launched, and so we figured, if just like 10% of that, pledges were good.
Yeah.
And it turned out that our guesstimate is, less than 0.5%.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Just crazy.
And so that's when we first ran into the obstacle of, when people see it on the internet, they assume it must be free.
Also true. Big problem with Spinwhiz Comics, actually.
Yeah. And not realizing that, the artist has to be paid, the colorist has to be paid, production has to be paid, all of that. And, that just money doesn't come out of thin air. Mm-mm. So, after failing, it was a real education. And I realized I didn't have the email list that I needed, but we did, even though we failed, we actually did okay, because we had over 200 backers, and made a little over, we got up to a little over $7,000, and we're like, okay, well, that's not too shabby for someone, that didn't know us from anybody at the time. And so when we relaunched, we decided to do everything in smaller bits, had a lower goal, and were fully funded in 48 hours.
Oh.
And because we used those 200 some odd people, we could contact again through Kickstarter, and also I asked them to, like, please join my mailing list, and I'm not going to spam you. This is just to notify you of when we're going to launch again, and just news about Boston Metaphysical. And so that was kind of like my core beginning real email list, and then I built on that, going to cons and doing other stuff.
Yeah, that's awesome. And again, back to the hustle, it is a lot of work.
Yes.
If anybody thinks that putting a Kickstarter up and just watching it is what happens, they are in dire straits when they finally get into it, because it is it's almost a day job, as much as people run it.
It is almost a second full-time job. I mean, fortunately, this is number 8 for me. So,
oh, wow.
Yeah. So I know how to space things out and how to time things so it doesn't eat up when we're running up to it, getting people ready and, fans ready that it's coming, and our progress and what we're doing. So when we're ready to launch, people know, and they're ready to go, and the emails go out. I mean, I can tell you the first 3 days of it, as my husband knows, I'm sitting at my desk going back and forth between Facebook posts, emails, Twitter, more emails, Instagram, back to Facebook, because I'm sure, as you realize, if you overpost in groups on Facebook, they'll put you in Facebook jail.
Yep.
So I'm very strategic about what gets posted on Facebook. And so I've never been in Facebook jail at all. And,
wow.
But still the word gets out. But it's just this, this rotation. And so also people tend to get snowblind if they keep seeing the same thing over and over again. So you've got to change it up, and then you have to spend time just talking to people. You just stop with all the posting and, go look at an interesting thread and just talk to people.
Yep.
Or go on Twitter and just, an interesting, relevant conversation. You just talk to people. Yep.
Shocker that social media should be social instead of just posting crap and hoping somebody likes it, and likes do no good. They even nuke that from the algorithm anyway. Unless it's like over 1,000 in a certain amount of time or something ridiculous like that. But
yeah,
I'm amazed at how many people don't do social media properly.
Yeah, I mean, it's like when my friends who know how to run Kickstarters, they'll launch and I'll leave a comment, and then they'll comment to my comment, and then I'll comment to their comment, and we'll do that about 5 times because we know it gets into the algorithms. Even if we're just talking BS in the comments. But it's always like, how are you doing? Da da da. This looks great. Wow, I like the color on this. Oh, what do you think of it? And it's just, yeah.
Yep. The algorithm of Twitter and Instagram specifically have definitely garnered more towards conversation pieces.
Yes.
And actual content instead of just posting and hosting and leaving. I find it easier to do on Twitter because it's so specific and quick. Where Instagram has its own thing where it could be, you could start something and then it comes back and forth, but the discussion itself is harder. And then Facebook is, I dislike Facebook drastically. I don't like it. I use it because I have to, not because I like it.
Yeah, I mean, you do have to use Facebook. But yeah, they have definitely changed the algorithms on Facebook. for Kickstarters and things like that.
Mm-hmm.
And, you know, and I also don't like, I hate it when I'm over tagged on something
Mm-hmm.
because that makes me crazy. So when I launch, you know, I'll tag a handful of people because I believe they'll understand that this is like a one-off and it's just to get the party started.
Yep.
And then I don't bother them again. And then things start getting picked up, and you know, we can help defeat the algorithm that way. But I sort of kind of refer to them as my street team, but you know, I do the same thing for them when they launch.
Mm-hmm.
So that's one of the things I love about the independent comic community is we help each other, and I am of the belief that we can all rise together.
Mm-hmm. And it actually does work as well.
Yes,
so
it does.
I've been trying to get that point across for our site, and that when we tag you in something, just don't like it, like share it, and then say something. You know, even something like "thanks so much," and then I'm gonna come back and say, "Oh, you guys are doing awesome. This is great. I hope everybody reads it." 3 or 4 posts in, and all of a sudden it does trigger. And
Yes.
I would say, and this is gonna blow your mind, but out of everybody we have on Spinwhiz right now, I did an analysis because I'm geeky like that. As part of my background, 10% of the people that I tag in social media to help promote their content retweet it.
Wow.
And I'm like, you guys are killing yourself. Like, this is easy page views. Like, this is cake. This is what the algorithm is built on. And you actually have real content to show. It's not just a post about, you know, some stupid joke. It actually leads to something. And I have had a very difficult time trying to get independent publishers involved in saying, so I might even teach a class on social media on each thing.
You probably should. If you haven't noticed already, I already liked and retweeted.
I did. I smiled because I'm like, holy shit, she is on it, man. Like, it is so refreshing to see. But again, a lot of people, I will say this, it's not necessarily anybody's fault. You and I have a very marketing-esque background, or at least in part. And a lot of people that are creators do not have that. They have been drawing, or they are coders, or a lot of the people that I know are actually storyboard artists, or they do something for movies or something like that. So they're not in the promotional silo. They're in the creation silo. And in that, they have people that do that for them. So they kind of miss that boat. So I'm trying to, and I might actually teach it. A couple people have already asked me, they're like, hey, how do you know how to do this? I'm like, because I do it every day. I've been doing it since, you know, Twitter came out, I guess, basically. I've been... Yeah,
no, you should. I think you should teach a course. I think that'd be a good idea.
It's just a fun one, like a fun webinar. Doesn't cost anybody anything. It's just, it's open to everybody. And hopefully that will help, because I think it really, once they understand, hey, we have 53 publishers on the site right now. There are almost 100 individual writers on our site. That's one tweet. If everybody goes out and likes it and retweets it, the amount of traffic it will garner just to that one post is almost unheard of. And it takes 2 seconds.
Yeah.
So it just, that's what I'm trying to build up, is to help everybody out.
It's like when you get on Twitter, the first thing I do is it notifies me, you know, of messages and any notifications. I click on notifications to see if, you know, anybody is saying something to me that's relevant, or, you know, it needs to be retweeted, or I need to say thank you, or it needs to be responded to in some fashion.
Mm-hmm.
And then after that, I go and look up, you know, Boston Metaphysical Society to see where if it's been mentioned anywhere. So there's a new review or something. And then I, you know, deal with that accordingly, retweet it or respond to it or something. Mm-hmm. And, you know, I love it when I find new content up there. I'm like, I'm all over it.
Mm-hmm. And
it just should be, I realize people have limited time and most have regular 9-to-5 jobs, but, you know, just do get on Twitter at least once a day and check all that.
Mm-hmm. Yep. It's a heart.
And
It's a heart
respond.
button. It's a retweet with a comment, and it's check this out, and then underneath the one that was the original post, you type something like "Thank you so much for your support."
Oh yeah.
Boom.
Oh, yeah.
Done. And
Done.
like even after this interview is over, every time I tweet something out, because you retweeted, I will go back and I'll say thank you. This is for everybody watching on YouTube or on Twitter or on Twitch. This is what happens. And it's supposed to happen. It's part of the algorithm. Is I will go and I'll say thank you so much for being on the show. You were awesome. I'll post your YouTube link as soon as I get it. The YouTube link will go up. Chances are you'll like that and say thank you for, whatever it is. And that'll trigger it. And then as soon as I get the YouTube link, not only will I promote it on Twitter, but I'll also drop it back into that conversation. Because everybody that had picked up from the algorithm will see it again because now it's a stream.
Yeah.
Or a string, excuse me. So I'm like, that's easy. That takes literally 30 seconds.
Yeah.
And I definitely want to get, because we have so much amazing content, we have so many people like yourself on this site already, that it is just a wellspring of ass kicking that people could just go nuts for.
Oh yeah. I mean, as you already know, SourcePoint Press picked up the first 6 issues of Boston Metaphysical along with the trade paperback, which, by the way, will be in previews, I think, starting next week. So
awesome. Congratulations.
Yeah. And SourcePoint's been great, and they have some amazing talent over there.
Ooh. Oh my gosh. Yeah.
It's amazing. And everybody hustles.
They do.
Everybody hustles. And it's a very impressive company, and glad to be on board over there. But yeah, when this is over, I'm going to be getting on the phone to retailers next week, trying to convince them to, pre-order the trade. And hopefully this Kickstarter will encourage them. Well, you might want to order the trade because I had, over 500 backers on my last Kickstarter. Somebody in your shop might be interested in this.
Yeah, seriously. And honestly, with the amount of print that's out, 90% of profit comes from print.
Yeah.
10% from digital. And that's a whole nother that's something that you and I can nerd out on the business side of things and see how you would do it, because I have my own personal ideas of how we're going to transcend that. But it's super important for people to buy and pre-order your comic.
Yes.
And unfortunately, it's one of the only ways they can get your comic unless they go to a show. And we hope to change that in the next year, which will be fun as well. Nothing like throwing a curveball in the Diamond's wheelhouse. But at the same time,
they need a curveball.
They're a
monopoly. They're a monopoly. It's ridiculous.
They are a monopoly.
They're a monopoly.
Yeah, you're under NDAs, but so off stream, if you want to talk sometime, I will actually tell you what we have planned, and I want to see your eyes at the end of it. Because I have passed it by a couple people that are in our industry, and there's a couple people that are higher up in a Marvel DC-esque like management position who are fans of what I'm trying to do, and I've passed it by them, and all they do is laugh. Not in a bad way. They're laughing like, holy shit, somebody's finally going to do it. And I think that's awesome to have that kind of backing. And I can't even talk about it yet. That's the worst part. But to have the support, to pass it by people and say, I have a theory. Do you think this will work? And they start laughing, saying, nobody's ever tried that. You're really going to piss them off, is awesome. Because we have to be disruptive in this industry, because there's so much free content. And there's so much great content out there. And then there's a whole load of crap that you kind of have to float to the top among even your peers of greatness, because now there's, because of the way society is and how much, with Netflix and Hulu and all these other things, the amount of time somebody has extra to consume content is minimizing. So how do we make sure that you are the one on top of that chain and will purchase that print and want to go to a show to specifically see you out, because you have a variant cover of something they can only get there, or eventually on Spinwhiz, and it's signed, but they get to meet you and shake your hand and take a picture.
Yeah.
That is a huge piece of that wheel that I think Diamond specifically misses completely, and they don't give a shit because they have a monopoly.
Yeah, yeah, that's true.
So, but again, that's a whole nother discussion. Hopefully, people hearing this, they're not already scoping me out because they have it. But anyway, so I'm gonna drop the links again. So, Bam Wildcard, welcome to the stream. You guys are amazing. This has, it looks like 40 hours to go right now. So in the if you're watching on YouTube, obviously it will be about a day later. So you're running out of time. Get in there.
Yes.
Back it up.
The Kickstarter ends on Friday, 11:30 Pacific Standard Time.
Mm-hmm. And I'm also going to drop all the good stuff that Madeleine has on Spinwhiz Comics. All 6 of the episodes or issues are up right now. Just before we kind of transition to something else, like I told you we tried to get a half an hour, and we're already on 45 minutes.
Of course.
Because it is. Just because. For people that do know about your previous content, what is it about this one that is different? Because this is a solo. This is its own storyline.
Yeah, the last 3 sequels were all standalone. Scourge the Mechanical Man, Spirit of Rebellion, and Ghosts and Demons. They do play off one another, but they are complete stories unto itself. And they each have a little prologue that, in case you haven't read anything, it gets you up to speed. And fortunately, just due to the art and the circumstance, you can, by looking at it, okay, this is a period piece. By the title, there's ghosts, there's demons, there's guys that fight it, and interesting stuff. But the reason, as I mentioned before, I'm doing the standalones is, I like to read a complete story, and I know other people do too. So this way they get a complete story, but of course it's open-ended enough where I can take it wherever I choose to go in the next one.
That's awesome. So everybody make sure you get it. I have a couple more questions and then we can tee off. Okay. From a reading perspective, outside of comics, are you a fan of any authors that are like kind of your go-to whenever they release a new book? You're on it?
Oh, yeah. I'm a huge sci-fi fantasy fan. Lois McMaster Bujold is top of my list with her Miles, hopefully I'm pronouncing it, Verkosigan series, which has won a bunch of Hugos. And she is actually being named a Grandmaster this year.
Whoa.
Yeah, science fiction Grandmaster. Another go-to is John Scalzi, who does very snarky science fiction.
Ooh, fun.
Which is very fun. God, who else? I've gotten into audiobooks lately because I'm on the road so much. And this has allowed me to read a lot of stuff that I just normally wouldn't have time to read. And the most recent ones is Tomi, and I'm sure I'm pronouncing her last name incorrectly, Adamayo. I'm not sure it is. Anyway, it's the children. The first book is The Children of Blood and Bone. The second one, which is out now, is Children of Virtue and Vengeance. Her first book is already in development for a movie. In fact, it was before it was even published.
Oh my gosh.
It's what I call, it's very classically structured, which is why I'm sure Hollywood is all over it, but it's also unique, and the characters are layered, and or conflict is organic, and it's set in a fictional place called Orisha, which is actually, if I understand correctly, and someone out there may know more than me, was once a either a country or city state or in Africa. And I believe it's all based on African mythology.
Oh, that's awesome.
But it's just fantastic. And, and she's so young. She's like all of 26 or something.
Oh my gosh.
I know.
To have that kind of talent so young.
It's really good. And that's the one I'm listening to when I'm at the gym. And then I have, what's her, I'm going to move this a little bit. I can look at it. R.F. Kuang's The Poppy War. And I'm reading the sequel to that, The Dragon Republic. Also excellent. And that is loosely based on Chinese mythology and the Sino War, and just also amazing. So I like to read fantasy that is outside of Western culture, because I know Western culture.
Right.
It's like, okay, it's not new.
Yeah, you can only read about so many fairies and elves and dwarfs and.
Yeah, it's all, based on, it's sure Game of Thrones was great, but it's based on medieval Europe. These other books are not, and so I get to learn stuff, and to me it's interesting because I'll go like, that's interesting. I wonder where that myth came from, and then I'll go Google it, and so it educates me at the same time. So I get to learn more about another culture while being entertained by this great book.
That's awesome.
It's really nice.
Yeah, my go-to is Stephen King. I devour pretty much anything he brings out. The last two books I have not, because, well, I work full time and then I run Spinwhiz when my son and my wife go to bed. So my reading time is minimal. But I mean, his Dark Tower series. Before then, I knew I was a decent, fun writer, but it wasn't until I read The Dark Tower that I understood how I liked to write. And then all the stories that intertwine with The Dark Tower that you read off, that are, like you said, they're their own book, but it kind of ties in a little bit. And it just blew me away that I was just like, oh my gosh, like this is so amazing. So you kind of learn as to what it was like during that era of time. I kind of looked into it and stuff like that, but just but I like fantasy and sci-fi as well. I just haven't gotten into it as much. I read a bunch of the new Star Wars canon to kind of catch up for the movies, and I was like, well, that was a waste of time. Like that was unnecessary, but I love that as well. And I am like you, I shouldn't say bored, but I am so used to this mythology that people use in fantasy that I am looking for something else that's outside of that, because I like to hear all the different lore of different countries.
Oh yeah,
it's just awesome.
Yeah, and like my husband's our new favorite thing on Netflix is Korean drama.
Really?
Yeah, we tried doing some of the comedies, which they were a little too goofy for our taste, but and they're period pieces because I love history. So we watched My Country, A New Age, which was amazing, and then we watched Mr. Sunshine, which takes place in the late 1800s, early 1900s Korea, when as the Japanese were colonizing Korea and then came in. The acting is just superlative. It just was amazing. The production values were amazing, and it was great. It was just, I mean, the Koreans are knocking it out of the park when it comes to film and TV, as far as I'm concerned. They're just acing it, and good for them. And another thing, it's also interesting because I know absolutely nothing about Korean history. So while I'm, in between watching episodes, I'm like Googling, okay, did this really happen? Or how did they change this? Or, things like that. So, you learn.
Yeah.
It's so fun just learning.
Well, now my content queue is filled up again after
there
talking
you
to
go.
you. So damn it, now I got more to watch and more to read and no time to do it. So anyway,
Yes.
well, we are almost out of time. It's at 54 minutes.
Oh my God. Oh my God.
So, is there anything else you want to chat about before we leave? I mean, I have all the time in the world, but
I know
you
I have to
probably
go.
don't.
I have to go walk the dogs. Yeah, that's my next mission is to go walk the dogs. Other than to, come on board the Kickstarter. If by the time you see it, if the Kickstarter's over, that's okay. Come see me at a con. I'll be at right now WonderCon, Denver, San Diego, Rose City in Portland, and then I'll be doing some smaller steampunk conventions, Clockwork Alchemy in Burlingame, California, Gaslight Expo, which is in San Diego in the fall. And I'll be at Silicon Valley, which I just found out is going to be in October.
Oh, wow. October.
I hope, actually, I hope to be at Silicon Valley, I should say. I haven't gotten their email yet about signing up, so.
Well, I mean, I can't wait to see you again at San Diego Comic-Con at the latest. I will have this up shortly, and we'll just go from there. I mean, thank you so much for being on the show.
Well, thank you so much for squeezing me in, before the Kickstarter ended. I really appreciate it.
Of course. Like I said, you were honestly one of my favorite authors and now favorite people. And that is a very hard list to get on because I don't do that. It comes with a part of respect and a part of just the person you are, and you got them both. So I look forward to seeing you again, definitely hanging out. And if we're at a con, I'll definitely, hopefully you and your husband will both be there because I thought he was awesome as well. He was great.
He is.
And tell him I said hello because I think he'll probably remember me.
Yeah.
I mean, there weren't too many people at San.
I have to go talk to Jeff. He was like, okay.
Yeah, the guy in the sport coat at San Diego Comic-Con that looked like he was cosplaying a business person.
Okay.
Yeah. So anyway, everybody hang out. I'm going to be right back. I'm going to say goodbye to Madeleine offline. And then I am actually tonight, instead of playing games, I'm actually going to throw this into Hit Film and see if I can load everything that's going on right now to YouTube to try to get this up for Madeleine before her Kickstarter's over. So hang out just for a minute. Madeleine, hang on the line for me. I'll be right back, everybody. Hang out. BRB.